The abandoned survivor. The stars were silent. The broken ship drifted like a ghost in the endless night. Its metal skin was torn and blackened, floating near a forgotten planet. Inside, the air was thin, the lights weak, and the silence heavy. In the center of the wreck lay a cracked cryopod. Frost covered the glass, hiding the figure trapped inside. It was a young woman, her face pale, her lips almost blue. She had been left behind, abandoned in the wreck, forgotten by those who once claimed her. Her breathing was slow, each breath weaker than the last. Her body was still, yet her heart fought to beat. She should have been dead, and maybe that was the plan, but something deep inside her refused to let go. The ship itself told a story. Alien symbols marked the walls, wires cut and panels torn out. It was not an accident, it was a choice. She had been left to die, sacrificed like she was nothing. Outside the pod, sparks flickered from a broken console. The emergency system still tried to keep her alive. It sent out a faint distress signal, weak and broken. The signal repeated again and again, reaching into the dark void of space. Her memories were lost in a storm of pain and shadows. She could not remember her home or why she was here, but in her fading dreams, she saw faces, cold eyes that looked down at her, voices that said she was no longer useful. And then, silence as they left her behind. Her body twitched once, her lips parted, a faint sound escaping. There was no one to hear it, no one to answer. The ship's hull groaned as gravity pulled it closer to the dead planet below. Time was running out, and yet, far away, a small human scout ship moved through the same sector. The crew was tired, scanning empty space for any sign of life. Then one of them noticed a flicker on the screen, a weak distress signal, almost too faint to catch. They leaned closer, checking twice. Yes, it was real. Someone out there was calling for help. The captain frowned. It could be a trap. Pirates often use fake signals. But the words of old human tradition echoed in his mind. Never ignore a cry for help. He gave the order. They turned the ship toward the drifting wreck. As the human ship drew closer, the wreck came into view, a broken giant, silent and cold. The humans looked at it with a mix of fear and pity. The scanner showed faint life signs inside. Just one heartbeat, slow and fading. Inside the cryopod, the woman stirred. Her eyes fluttered for a moment, but she could not open them. Her body was weak, her spirit almost gone. But the distress signal had reached someone. Her fate was about to change. The human ship latched onto the wreck with careful hands. The airlock opened, and two figures in suits entered the broken halls. Their lights cut through the darkness. They saw the cracked pod, and inside, the abandoned survivor. For a moment they froze. She was not human. Her features were different. Alien, yet not monstrous. She looked fragile, almost human in her weakness. One of the humans whispered, "She's still alive." The other shook his head, barely. The choice was heavy. They could turn back and leave her. They could say it was too dangerous. But then, one thought silenced their doubts. She was alive, and life must be protected. With care, they opened the pod. Cold air spilled out, and her fragile body trembled. Her lips parted again, a faint sound escaping. It was not a word, but a plea. The humans exchanged a look. There was no more debate. They carried her carefully, lifting her from the grave she had been left in. The broken ship groaned again, its final breath. The distress signal ended as the power finally died. The wreck would soon fall into the planet's pull, but she was no longer inside. She was saved from the silence, saved from the void. As the humans carried her back to their ship, her heart beat once more, weak but steady. The universe had abandoned her, but humanity had found her. And that was the beginning of something no one could yet understand. The message in the void. The human scout ship drifted through the dark. It was small compared to the stars, just a speck in the endless sea. Inside, the crew worked quietly, scanning, recording, searching for signs of life. For weeks they had found nothing but silence. and silence could drive even the bravest hearts toward despair. Then the silence broke. A flicker touched the radar, so faint it almost vanished. The operator leaned closer, unsure if it was real. At first, he thought it was noise, a mistake in the system. But the signal pulsed again, weak and broken, like a heartbeat on the edge of stopping. It carried across the void, begging to be heard. The captain walked to the console, his eyes narrowing. "Distress signal," the operator whispered. Everyone turned. In deep space, such a signal could mean anything. It could be a trap. Pirates often use dying signals to lure ships closer. It could be a wreck, or worse, a battlefield still waiting for scavengers. But there was one truth about humans. They did not turn away from a cry for help. Not when there was even the smallest chance a life could be saved. The captain knew this, his crew knew it too. He took a breath, his voice steady. "We follow it." Engines rumbled as the ship turned toward the source. The crew sat in silence, watching as the signal grew stronger. Minute by minute, the shape of the broken ship appeared on their screens. A shadow against the stars, torn and lifeless. The wreck told its own story before they even reached it. It had suffered. It had been abandoned. It looked more like a grave than a ship. When they came closer, sensors picked up something shocking. Life signs. Not many, not a group, only one. A single flicker of life inside the wreck. So faint it could vanish at any moment. The crew stared at the reading, their hearts tight. Who could have survived in such ruin? The boarding team prepared. Two suited figures moved into the wreck. Their lights cut through dust and floating debris. Every corner whispered danger. Every sound echoed like a warning. Yet the weak signal guided them deeper, through broken halls, through shattered walls, until they saw it. The cryopod stood against the ruin, cracked and frosted. Inside lay the woman, pale, fragile, almost gone. The humans froze, stunned by her form. She was alien, yes, her features not like theirs, but she was no monster. Her face was soft, her body weak. She looked more human in her suffering than any enemy they had ever known. One of the humans placed a hand on the pod's glass. A faint mist fogged against his glove. She was breathing barely. The medic inside the team spoke, voice tense. "If we move her now, she might not survive. If we leave her here, she will die for sure." The choice cut deep. They could follow safety rules, mark the wreck, and leave. Or they could take her, risk their lives, and risk the ship. The silence stretched, broken only by the crackling of their comms. Finally, the captain's voice came through. "Bring her." With careful hands, they opened the pod. Cold air poured out, and her body trembled. Her lips parted, a faint sound escaped. It was not a word, but it carried a weight that silenced everyone. It was a plea, weak and fragile. The humans looked at each other. They could not abandon her. Not now, not after hearing that sound. They carried her out, step by step. Behind them, the wreck groaned, metal twisting as gravity pulled harder. Time was ending for the dead ship, but time was beginning again for the survivor. The human scout ship sealed its airlock. Engines flared, pulling away from the grave. The broken vessel fell into the planet's shadow, never to rise again. Inside the human ship, the crew stood around the woman. Her chest rose and fell weakly. Her heart beat faint but steady. The medic began his work, attaching monitors, checking her pulse. The captain watched silent. Something had shifted in the room. They had brought back more than a body. They had carried hope into their ship. And far away, unseen, something stirred in the dark. The signal they had answered had not gone unnoticed. Other ears had heard it. Other eyes had turned. The humans did not yet know it. But saving her had already changed their fate. And the void was no longer silent. The stranger's awakening. The hum of the human ship was soft, steady, like the heartbeat of a giant. Inside the medical bay, the alien woman lay on a narrow bed. Her skin was pale, almost glowing under the cold lights. Her breathing came slow and shallow. Machines whispered around her, trying to keep her alive. The crew gathered, watching in silence. They had saved her from the wreck, but saving her life was another battle. Her body fought against their machines. Her blood carried codes, strange symbols dancing across the medic screen. It was like her body was rejecting life itself. Every attempt to heal her ended in more alarms, more red lights. The medic's hands shook. He had patched up soldiers, saved miners crushed in accidents, even pulled survivors from burning wrecks. But this was different. This was something he did not understand. Her body was both fragile and strong. It clung to life even as it slipped further away. "She's not human," one crew member muttered. "Maybe she's dangerous," another whispered. The words hung heavy. The fear was real. What if she was an enemy soldier, abandoned on purpose? What if saving her would bring doom to the ship? The captain listened, but said nothing. He only watched her. She looked so fragile, so close to death. Dangerous or not, she was alive, and that alone gave her the right to be saved. The medic leaned closer. Her eyelids fluttered for a second. A faint sound slipped past her lips. Not a word, just a broken breath. But it silenced the doubts in the room. She was not a weapon, not a trap. She was a soul fighting against death. Hours passed. The medic refused to leave her side. He spoke to her softly, though she could not understand. "Stay with us. Don't let go. You're not alone anymore." His words were not for her ears, but for her spirit. And somehow, he felt she could hear him. The crew argued outside. Some said she was too dangerous, that they should put her back in the wreck and leave. Others said no. They had already chosen. They had already carried her from the grave. To abandon her now would make them less than human. The debate grew louder, the fear sharper. But inside the med bay, the medic made his choice. He would not let her die. Her heartbeat weakened again. The monitors screamed. The medic panicked, trying one last desperate move. Machines failed. Injections did nothing. Her breath slowed to almost nothing. He looked down at her face, pale and still. In that moment, he remembered something old, something human. Not science, not technology, but instinct. He leaned closer. His lips brushed against hers in a simple, desperate kiss. It was not romance, not desire. It was hope. It was connection. It was life calling to life. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was silent. The machines still screamed. And then, her chest rose. Her heart beat once, then again, stronger than before. The medic gasped. The crew outside rushed in, eyes wide as the monitors changed. Her breathing steadied. Her pulse grew stronger. The impossible had happened. Not because of machines, not because of science, but because of something far simpler. Because humanity refused to let her go. Her eyes flickered. Slowly, painfully, she opened them. They were not human eyes, but they were filled with light. Fear flashed there, confusion, but also something new, trust. She saw faces around her, not the cold eyes that had abandoned her. These faces looked different. They looked kind. The crew froze. She was awake. She was real. She was alive. No one spoke. No one dared break the fragile moment. Only the medic whispered, "You're safe now. You're not alone." She could not understand his words, but she felt the warmth in them. And for the first time since her abandonment, she closed her eyes not in despair, but in peace. She was no longer drifting in the void. She was no longer forgotten. She had been brought back, not by power, not by machines, but by humanity's touch. And somewhere deep inside, a spark had been lit, a spark that would grow into something greater, something the universe had not seen before. Because one alien woman had been left to die, but humanity had kissed her back to life. Life against the darkness. The human ship moved through the void, its engines humming like a lullaby. But inside the medical bay, there was no peace. The alien woman breathed faintly, her chest rising and falling like a fragile flame. Every breath was a battle, every second a risk. The medic never left her side. He slept in the chair near her bed, waking at every sound. Her body carried strange wounds that no human tools could explain. Her veins glowed faintly under the skin, as if carrying light and poison at the same time. Machines could not read her fully. They showed errors again and again. Yet the medic refused to give up. He spoke to her softly, even when she could not hear. "You're stronger than this. Don't stop now. Keep fighting." Sometimes her fingers twitched as if answering him. And that was enough to keep him going. The rest of the crew watched with unease. They whispered in the halls. She could be a weapon. She could bring danger to us all. But then they looked at the medic, a tired man with red eyes, who still smiled at her as if she was family. And their doubts grew quieter. Nights passed in silence. The stars outside looked the same, but inside the ship, something was changing. The woman's body tried to heal. Her skin warmed. Her heartbeat grew steadier. But the battle was not over. Her mind was trapped in shadows, caught between death and life. In her dreams, she remembered fragments. Cold rooms filled with alien voices, needles, chains, and eyes that looked at her without mercy. She remembered the moment they left her in the wreck. Alone, broken, discarded. Her heart screamed, even as her lips stayed silent. But then, new voices entered her dreams. Warmer, softer. Human voices. They did not command, they comforted. They told her she was safe, that she was not alone. And somewhere deep inside, she began to believe it. The medic noticed. Sometimes when he held her hand, her grip tightened faintly. Once, her lips formed a sound, soft and broken. Not a word, but a spark of life. He leaned closer, whispering, "That's it. Stay with us. You're winning." The crew began to change too. They brought food, water, blankets to the med bay. They told stories near her bed, stories of Earth, of oceans and skies. They laughed softly, not to wake her, but to remind themselves they were human. And somehow, the air around her bed grew warmer. It felt less like a battlefield and more like a home. But danger lingered. One night, alarms screamed as her heartbeat dropped again. The medic rushed, trying every tool he had. Nothing worked. Her skin turned cold. Her breath almost vanished. Despair filled the room. And in that moment, the medic did the same desperate act he had done before. He pressed his lips against hers, not as a lover, but as a bridge. It was human will poured into a single act. For a second, the silence was endless. And then, her body shuddered. Her heartbeat returned, faint but alive. The crew gasped. Some crossed themselves. Others stared in disbelief. It was not science, not medicine. It was something deeper, something the universe could not measure. When she opened her eyes again, just for a moment, they saw something new there. A light, faint but real. She looked at the medic, at the crew. Her lips moved, struggling to form a sound. One broken word escaped. Alive. The crew froze, their hearts racing. She had spoken. She was waking not just in body, but in spirit. Life was winning against the darkness. Not because of machines, not because of power, but because of humanity's choice to care. Outside the ship, the stars remained silent. But in the med bay, something brighter than stars was born. Hope. And hope had a way of changing everything. Return of the light. The med bay was quiet, but not the heavy quiet of death. It was the fragile quiet of a heart trying to heal. The alien woman lay beneath soft blankets, her skin warmer now, her breaths deeper. Every monitor around her glowed with steadier lines. She was not safe yet, but she was no longer slipping away. The crew gathered one by one. They stood at the doorway, afraid to disturb the fragile peace. But they could not stay away. They had all seen her fight against the darkness. And in some way, her fight had become theirs too. When her eyes opened again, weak and uncertain, a hush fell over the room. Her gaze wandered, confused, searching. The medic leaned close, his voice gentle. "You are safe. You are alive." She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. Her eyes softened, and for the first time since they found her, she looked not afraid but calm. The crew noticed something else. She was beginning to trust them. Her body no longer tensed when they approached. Her breathing did not spike when they touched the monitors or adjusted her bed. It was as if she had realized that these strange humans were not enemies. They were protectors. Days passed slowly. Her strength grew with each one. She sat up for the first time, her movements weak but determined. The medic smiled at her progress, clapping softly as if she were a child learning to walk. She tilted her head at the sound, then gave the faintest smile in return. That smile spread through the crew like fire through dry grass. It was small, but it meant everything. She could not speak their language, not yet, but she began to mimic sounds. Her lips shaped words imperfectly. Her voice cracked, but every attempt pulled the crew closer. They taught her simple things. Water, food, light. And each time she tried, they laughed with joy, not at her failure, but at the miracle of her effort. One night, she sat by the viewport, wrapped in a blanket. She looked at the stars with wide eyes. The medic sat beside her, silent. After a long moment, she touched the glass, pointing at the endless lights. Then she touched her chest. Then she touched his. It was not words, but the meaning was clear. She was alive, and she owed it to them. The crew began to feel something strange, too. At first, she had been a burden, a danger. Now, she was a symbol, a reminder of why humans reached into the stars. Not for conquest, not for treasure, but for life, for connection, for something greater than survival. But shadows still lingered. The medic noticed scars on her skin, deep and unnatural. Not from accidents, but from purpose. She had been used, tested, shaped by hands that saw her as less than alive. She carried secrets in her blood, secrets that frightened even the machines. The crew could only wonder, who had left her to die, and why had they feared her enough to abandon her? One evening, as the ship drifted in quiet space, the answer came closer. The sensors lit up with faint signals. Distant ships, moving like hunters in the dark. The captain frowned, his heart heavy. They were not alone, and whoever searched the stars now might be looking for the very life they had saved. Back in the med bay, the woman looked stronger. Her eyes no longer dull, but bright, glowing faintly in the low light. She touched the medic's hand and whispered one word. It was broken, weak, but the meaning pierced every heart in the room. Home. The crew froze. Home. It was her first true human word. It was not just sound, it was trust, it was belonging. She was no longer only a survivor, no longer only an alien. She was something more. She was light brought back from the edge of darkness. And that light was now theirs to protect. Shadows of the enemy. The stars outside the human ship glittered like cold eyes. But among them, darker shapes moved, silent and sharp. The scanners caught the first sign, faint signatures of ships hiding in the void. They were not human ships. Their patterns were strange, jagged, and precise. The crew stared at the screen, their hearts growing heavy. "They're searching," the captain whispered. He did not need to say who. Everyone already knew. The survivor had not been abandoned by chance. She had been discarded, and now those who discarded her were back. Inside the med bay, the woman stirred, her body stronger, her eyes clearer, but her spirit unsettled. She felt it before the humans said a word. Her breathing quickened. Her hands shook as if remembering pain. When the medic tried to calm her, she looked at him with wide, desperate eyes. And in her broken voice, she whispered, "They." The room fell silent. One word, but it was enough. The enemy was near, and she feared them more than death. The crew gathered in the command deck. Some said they should run, escape before the hunters closed in. Others said no, they could not leave her. If they abandoned her now, they would be no better than those who left her in the wreck. The captain stood still, his jaw tight. "We stay, we protect her. That is what makes us human." Meanwhile, the medic sat beside her again. She gripped his hand, trembling. Her memories were breaking free. Shards of pain she could not hold back. She saw again the cold rooms, the chains, the voices that cut her apart. They had tested her, broken her, used her blood like a weapon. She had been a tool, not a person, until she was no longer useful. Then they threw her away. Tears touched her eyes. Not human tears, but something glowing, faint streaks of light down her skin. The medic wiped them gently, whispering, "You are not theirs anymore. You are ours. You are alive." She did not know the words, but she felt the truth, and she clung to his hand as if it was the only anchor left in the universe. The hunters drew closer. Their ships spread like a net, silent and patient. They were not rushing, they were certain. To them, the humans were weak, fragile creatures carrying stolen cargo. But they did not understand what the humans had done. They did not understand the fire that had been lit. In the med bay, the woman's body glowed faintly again. Her veins shimmered under her skin, pulsing like living light. The medic stared in awe and fear. "She's changing," he whispered, but the captain only said, "She's becoming who she was meant to be." For the first time, she stood on her own feet, weak but steady. She looked at the crew around her, at the humans who had saved her, and her eyes burned with something new. Not just fear, not just pain, but resolve. She raised her hand toward the viewport, toward the dark ships beyond. "They come," she whispered. But this time, her voice was not only fear. It was warning, it was defiance. The humans exchanged looks. They knew a storm was coming. They knew their small ship could not stand against an army. But they also knew something the enemy did not. They were not fighting alone anymore. They were fighting with someone who had been broken but not destroyed. Someone who had been left to die but brought back by humanity's hand. The shadows closed in. The lights of enemy ships pierced the dark like blades. The captain gave the order, "Ready the ship." The crew obeyed, their fear real, but their courage stronger. In the med bay, the medic whispered one last time to her, "No matter what comes, you are not alone." She nodded, her eyes glowing brighter. The darkness outside grew heavier, but inside, the light within her began to rise. Humanity's gift. The enemy ships closed in, shadows against the stars. The human scout ship shook as warning alarms echoed. The crew strapped into their stations, hearts racing but steady. They knew they were outnumbered, outgunned, too small to stand. But they also knew they were not alone anymore. In the med bay, the alien woman stood tall for the first time, her body weak, yet her eyes burned with light. Her veins glowed brighter, pulsing like rivers of fire under her skin. She had been broken, abandoned, discarded. But now, she was alive, and she refused to be taken again. The captain's voice thundered through the ship. "They think we are weak, they think we will run, but humanity does not run." The crew roared in answer, fear drowned by courage, and the medic stood beside her, his hand resting on hers. "You are one of us now. Whatever comes, we fight together." The enemy hailed them, their voice cold and sharp. "Return what is ours, or you will be destroyed." The crew glanced at each other, waiting for the captain's reply. He leaned toward the comm, his tone calm and firm. "She is not yours. She never was. She is alive, and life belongs to no master." Silence. Then the first blast struck, shaking the hull. Metal screamed, sparks flew, the ship lurched. But the humans held steady, firing back with everything they had. Their weapons were small, their shields thin, yet every shot burned with defiance. In the med bay, the woman fell to her knees, clutching her chest. She felt the pull of the enemy, the call of the chains they once forced upon her. They wanted her back, to break her again. But then she looked at the humans, fighting, bleeding, refusing to surrender. And something inside her shattered the chains. Light burst from her body, filling the room. The medic shielded his eyes, but he did not step back. She rose slowly, glowing brighter than the stars. Her voice rang out, not weak, not broken, but powerful. "No." The ship trembled, not from enemy fire, but from her awakening. The crew watched in awe as energy surged through the systems. The failing shields flared brighter, stronger, as if alive. Weapons powered up beyond their limits. The enemy fired again, but the blast dissolved against the new light. The woman walked to the viewport, her glow spilling across the deck. She raised her hand, and the energy pulsed outward. It was not a weapon of hate. It was not destruction. It was pure defiance, pure life, pure light. The nearest enemy ship cracked, torn apart by force it could not understand. The crew cheered, hope filling their hearts. For the first time, the battle was not hopeless. The woman turned, her eyes glowing, her voice trembling but clear. "Not alone," she said. The medic's heart leapt, tears burning his eyes. She had spoken again, not as a victim, but as a warrior. The enemy faltered, their formation breaking. They had not expected this. They had not feared humanity, but they had never faced humanity's greatest gift. Compassion turned into strength. Kindness turned into power. With every breath, her light grew, not destroying everything in rage, but protecting, shielding, defending. The crew fought harder, their courage lit by her fire. The enemy began to fall back. The shadows scattered before the light. And when the last shot faded, silence filled the stars again. The wrecks of enemy ships drifted into the void. The human scout ship floated scarred but alive. Inside, the crew gathered, staring at her in wonder. The woman stood still, her glow dimming, her body trembling. She was tired, but she was alive. The medic caught her as she fell, holding her close. Her lips brushed against his ear, whispering one final word. "Home." The crew froze, their hearts tight. She had chosen her word carefully. Not planet, not victory, but home. And in that moment, every human knew they had not only saved her life, they had saved her spirit. They had given her something the enemy never could. They had given her humanity, and in return, she had given them light.